Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom. This is Naaman with the DC Camp of Great Millstone, back for another video. First and foremost, call hello Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakah Radash. And once again, double honors go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who were well. Salutations also go out to the fellow Akim that are out there on the highways and byways, not to mention the many videos that they post to further get the truth out. Alright, so this is the copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that may otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right? Because I'm using this as a teaching tool. All right? And to further do reporting, etc., etc. Not for me to personally profit off of. I do not do that. All right, so I ran across, I usually don't deal with this guy, but on this one, I made an exception. Because whenever we were taught, if you remember in school growing up, about the Alamo, they always left a critical piece of information out. What was this all over? You never heard that. You just heard, well, red-blooded Americans fought against, the Mexican evil government and all that shit, the usual. When you think about it, puffing themselves up to be this, these righteous people, right? So, in any case, I'm going to go ahead and roll this, but yeah, we're going to see how they keep repeating in this documentary. And I saw this documentary not too long ago, even though it came out in 2018. And I remembered it, and I was like, you know what? At the time, I didn't think about it, but, he's right. And the name on this, it might surprise you, who's one of the, I think, his executive producers. But anyway, let's go ahead and roll the video.
So let me go ahead and go to the third thing that pissed me off. So on Monday, I came home. Did I play golf?
Yeah, 'cause I saw it on
golf
PBS.
on Monday, I think. So I came home, and my wife was watching this docu-series on the History Channel, and it was called The Frontiers Men Who Built America. So they have a series of these documentaries, The Men Who Built America.
Correction, I think it was, because here locally they have what's called Stories Channel, and they have all these docu-series, so it was that. I had to make a correction there.
They have The Food That Built America. This is a whole series. And so when I saw this, I saw that one of the executive producers was Leonardo DiCaprio. And so I sit down and I happened to walk in as they were talking about how Davy Crockett and Andrew Jackson were at odds and how Davy Crockett lost his bid for Congress. And then they were talking about how there was a play on Davy Crockett, and then how Davy Crockett then moved to Texas, and he was walking into a war raging in Texas. Roll this.
As Crockett begins to settle in, he realizes Texas is on the verge of rebellion.
Why are you not investing in tax
here we
liens?
go.
No, seriously.
Get it out of the way
Why are
early.
you not investing into one of the most incredible...
After years of loose governance, Mexican President Santa Anna suddenly imposes new restrictions on settlers. Now, angry Texans...
Santa Anna, he imposes new restrictions on settlers. Now, if you're watching, you will go, I'm curious. What are those new restrictions? They never say. Press play.
are calling for revolution.
Texas was on the verge of independence, that the Texians...
He says Texas were on the verge of independence. Okay, go ahead, roll it.
As they were called, were going to try to become
I need Gerald to clean his land.
And there would be possibilities, land and political opportunity.
In response, Santa Anna sends 500 troops to confiscate weapons and quell unrest. When Texans refuse to give in, he makes plans to retaliate.
Santa Anna is training an army in San Luis Potosí to march against Texas. Santa Anna did not think that this was a local insurgency. He was absolutely convinced the United States was involved. And so that's why the Mexican government was so determined to put down this revolt.
Crockett arrives in Texas at the same time as news of Santa Anna's counterattack.
When Crockett had gone to Texas was really just meant to be an extended hunting expedition and land scout, and he bumbles right into a war for independence.
He stumbles into a war for independence. And I'm just sitting here going, what are they trying to be independent about? Press play.
A number of things happened along the way. One was the appearance of Halley's Comet. And when Halley's Comet appeared in the sky in 1836, some people thought that it meant that David Crockett was coming to Texas to fight for independence.
Here we go again with that independence. And so the docuseries kept going on. And then they went to episode 4. And then I'm watching it. They talk about the Alamo. And they talk about independence. Then they go to the Battle of San Jacinto. Then they talk about what happened there. Roll it.
Suffer just 11 casualties. The crushing defeat leads to Mexico's surrender. And Texas finally wins independence.
Here we go right there. Texas finally wins independence. What in the hell is Texas trying to be independent for? I still haven't answered. Roll it.
Back in Washington, D.C., Jackson welcomes the news. He's dreamed of Texas joining the U.S. for years, but the future of Texas is caught in the growing debate over slavery.
Congress wasn't willing to go along with annexation because Texas would enter the Union with slavery. And the...
Oh my God! We finally hear the word slavery. Press play.
addition of Texas would tip the balance in the Senate in favor of the pro-slavery side. The result of this was that Texas remained in this limbo for almost a decade.
See, the problem is, I think I know what the problem is. See, the problem is, I am the reason them plantation owners couldn't stand reading Negroes. I think that's the real problem. The real problem is, I'm one of them Negroes who can read. And so I'm sitting here watching this docuseries, and I'm cussing the whole time because I have this book. And I've discussed this book on my show. I had the interview with the author. Actually, I got 2 copies of this book. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, Leonardo DiCaprio, you really want your name on some lying shit, fake ass stuff? Dr. Gerald Horne joins me right now, professor at the University of Houston, and the title of this book is called The Counter-Revolution of 1836, Texas Slavery in Jim Crow and the Roots of U.S. Family.
See, here we go, and this is further, again, we're in the era of these, this devil that's over us. Excuse me, I touched the wrong thing here. All right, being exposed. All right, and let's get that scripture real quick, because he has built himself up this image, much undeserved, I might add. And let's just go straight to it. It says, "Thou art filled with shame for glory." And he's been doing everything he can to minimize, for the longest, to minimize what damage the truth could do to him. All right, it says, drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. And boy, is it, whoa. The cup of the Most High Yahweh's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. Just look at that spewing. Strong's H 7022. Quaquala. Wath Quaquala. 1. Intense disgrace. Intense disgrace. Is that not what happened? Is that not what's happening? Excuse me. Look what's happening. And this is on all fronts. Look what's going on over in the land of Israel. Nobody's buying that shit anymore. Boy, this is a beautiful time. Again, Sirach, let's get it. Sirach 25 and 7. I think I ended my last video with that, but this is Sirach 25 and 7. It says, there be 9 things which I have judged in my heart to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue. A man that hath joy of his children, which, let's be honest, it's rare here on this side, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. And we are seeing him go down. And it's beautiful. It really is. This red bastard, all right, is losing everywhere.
Fascism. Book came about during COVID. It is a fascinating book. And I need y'all to understand something. Y'all see how thick this book is? I want y'all to see how thick this book is. I am a native Texan, born and raised in Houston, and every Texan is required to take 7th grade history. Texas. And that book is thicker than this book right here. And everything in this book was never in one of those history books I read growing up. Gerald, it pissed me off watching this series to listen to them go, independence, independence, independence. And not one time, Gerald, did they ever say what the hell they were trying to get away from Mexico for.
Well, this is Trumpian history, to put it mildly.
Trumpian history.
As you know more than most, when Texas seceded from Mexico and declared independence in 1836, a central reason was that Mexico, under a president of African descent, speaking of Vicente Guerrero, had moved to abolish slavery. And the slave owners...
Let's look him up real quick. Vicente... Let's see. Vicente Guerrero. All right. Look at him. Look at him. Look at that. Of so-called African descent. Look at that. They never showed us this. Let's see. Let's read a little bit. Vicente Ramon Guerrero Saldana lived from August of 1782 to February 1831. All right, was a Mexican military officer and a statesman who became the nation's 2nd president in 1829. So it's 7 years in at this point. All right, he was one of the leading generals who fought against Spain during the Mexican War of Independence. According to historian Theodore G. Vincent, Vicente Guerrero lived alongside indigenous people in, you know, I'm not going to even try, and had the ability to speak Spanish in the languages of the indigenous. All right, here he is once again. And this is something, don't want to get away completely from the topic, but you got to remember there are a lot of darker hued Mexicans, so-called Issacharites, that of course you're not allowed to see. And this is something that's not too big of a secret now in the present time, but you really have to search for it. I'll put it that way, because hey, it's anti, dark skin down there too, because everybody's, pretty much adopted the philosophy of these Edomites, these AKA so-called white supremacists. All right. Anyway, back to this. I just had to put that out there. But at this particular point in history, he was like, "Oh hell no!" And they're gonna tell you something else in the video, as its connection to Haiti. But let's go on back to the video.
Slave owners in Texas, including those who led the revolt, and speaking of Sam Houston, Stephen F. Austin, et al., rather than acquiesce to slavery, they decided to start an independent country, the Republic of Texas, which, interestingly enough, after it came into independence, began to challenge the United States for leading the African slave trade. The Lone Star flag of Texas could be found off the coast of Angola in Southwest Africa, off the coast of Brazil, the major market, off the coast of Cuba. Of course, if you look at your map, you'll see there's a straight shot from Galveston, Texas, the major slave trading port, to Cuba. And so that is what Mr. DiCaprio and his comrades neglected to note.
And Gerald, you lay out in the book, the reason they hated Mexico so much, because there was literally another country that was an abolitionist country bordering the...
Another point, good point, because rarely do they teach, I don't even know, I can't speak to today's curriculum, but I was never taught that you were hearing that slaves left the South, the deep South, and went north. They never taught you that they went across the southern border, or what was before it was called Texas or whatever have you, and even afterwards. The only thing even close to that is you hear now with that bullshit holiday they gave us, Juneteenth. You hear just the part about they're not realizing that in 1863, which was the Emancipation Proclamation, but they didn't get word until 1865 down in Texas. That's all closest thing you hear.
The fledgling United States of America.
Well, more than that, when Mexico comes into independence, it also allies with revolutionary Haiti. Abolitionist Haiti, as you know, came into independence as the first Black republic in 1804 and instantaneously began to put pressure on the slave trading powers, including the United States. And then when Texas seceded from Mexico, Haiti had reason to then put pressure on Texas in league with Mexico. And that too outraged the enslavers of Texas, because they thought this was mighty audacious for the Black rulers of Mexico and Haiti to be aligning. And then, of course, they were plotting, speaking of Mexico and Haiti, to invade Spanish-ruled Cuba and liberate the Africans there from enslavement. So they thought that the Mexicans and the Haitians had gotten too big for their britches, and that led to the secession from Mexico by Stephen F. Austin and Sam Houston and the so-called Texians.
Hey guys, this is U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff in Georgia. And before you skip this ad, just hear me out.
I am not one who believes that you or I have to be in every document, in every sort of thing. But I just found it interesting, Gerald, watching this, and I've seen many of these, and I'm like, wow, all of these historians you talk to, and none of them are Black, and you're having all of these people sharing their thoughts about Texas independence, and nobody utters slavery.
Well, it's even worse because, as you know, the 2020 census showed that Texas has the largest Black population in the United States of America. And in fact, the Texas Black population has been in the vanguard of struggle, as you know more than most, for decades. And so it's a slap in the face of Roland Martin and other Black Houstonians to put this kind of tripe and trash on the airwaves.
And it also, it also has to be, and you're used to it, being a historian, it also has to be offensive that the History Channel, which really should be called the His Story Channel, is presenting these docuseries and offering them up as and this is for the generation of people that don't read, offering this up as somehow, no, this is the stuff you don't know about. So people watch this and they walk away from this and go, I never knew those things. So now what they are doing, which you talk about being Trumpian, they can't stand folks like you because really they want, let's keep telling that white his story and keep advancing that. Douglas Blackmon, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, a white journalist out of Atlanta. Douglas is a great guy. He was responding to my post because I put it on LinkedIn, which led to us booking you. He said, I haven't seen this series, but Roland Martin's anger and exasperation is dead on about how pop history and pop culture continue to, quote, teach millions of people versions of our history that are simply false, factually wrong, fabricated, empirically disproven. The most nauseating part is how these fictions and perversions of truth are now so often presented with the tools and forms of documentary film and published works that, quote, look authoritative and are effectively endorsed by legitimate networks and publishers we once might have trusted.
Well, as you know, it's wholly consistent with the White House's attack on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, which is shorthand for attack on affirmative action, which is shorthand further for purging Black people from the historical landscape. It's consistent with...
And why is that? Because of their outright hatred for us. Let's get another scripture. All right. And we remember I just read about that shame. All right. In Habakkuk 2:16, all right? Let's go to Job. This is Job 8:22. And it says, they that hate thee shall be clothed with shame, and the dwelling place of the wicked shall come to naught. He's falling. And he's falling fast. All right? Clothed in shame. Let's see what Psalms 35:2 said. Let them be ashamed and brought to confusion together that rejoice at mine hurt. All right. Let them be clothed with shame and dishonor that magnify themselves against me. All right. And that's what's happening. And they're trying to come up with all kinds of ways to try to stave this off, and it's not working. This thing, and I gotta go back to what's happening out in California now, what's eventually going to happen all across America, and probably pretty much the whole, or I should say many cities around the world, is these riots. All right, because this has been planned out. Again, and I'm saying this because this is a means of distraction. All right, because there's other more serious things going on. You got this P. Diddy shit going on, distraction. That could be nothing more than a shaming ritual by the elites, to put him through this, whatever. Who cares? And there's other things going on, and that's people, especially our people, are so focused on that bullshit, they're not realizing, hey, the economy is about to collapse. There's going to be a few food shortage, all right, because the truckers are like, fuck this. And then you got China, they said they're not, and that has yet to take effect. So by the end of this month, it's really going to get bad. You're going to have a lot of empty shelves, all right. People are not focusing on that. They're focusing on bullshit that's purposely put out there, all right. So all this is going to come to a head soon. So I've been hearing a date of July the 4th. Wouldn't that be ironic? Independence Day, right? Back to the video.
With the attempts to smother the Smithsonian's National African American Museum in Washington, D.C., is consistent with what's being debated at the state legislature in Austin as we speak, so-called SB 37, which if it comes into law, will lead to a routing of African American studies departments, Black studies departments, Africana studies departments. They're attempting to poison the minds of our youth to make them enlist willingly in the Trump crusade against Black people.
And again, what happens with these networks, again, for the people who are not going to read your 400 or 500 pages, it's like, oh, I can sit here and I can now just get all of this stuff in one nice place, pre-packaged, looks great, tells us, sounds convincing. And what it is it is promoting a flat out lie. It is not being fully accurate. It is what this series is doing. It is portraying these white men, these frontiersmen, the ones who were rugged, who were fighting these savages, those Indians, who were just trying to get a land, and they were just trying to live the American dream. Never use the word stolen, never use the word genocide as you properly use when you describe, even in your introduction, that it was genocide that was being committed against Native Americans.
Indeed.
Let me pause it right there and go to Psalms real quick, because it's an onslaught of continual lies and trying to, first, they keep classifying us as Black, as African. Lies. We're neither. All right? Especially that Black shit. All right? This is Psalms chapter 4, verse 2. It says, O ye sons of men, how long will ye turn my glory into shame? How long will ye love vanity and seek after leasing? Selah. And that leasing there means, well, let's get it. Strong's H3577, kazab, falsehood, literally untruth. All right, deceitful, false, liar, lying. That's all they're about. All right, that's all they're about, and it's a continual, and that's just for outright hatred and jealousy.
Indeed. I've studied United States history from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and I must say that when you look at the history of Texas, what leaps out at you is the fighting spirit and the militancy of the indigenous, particularly the Comanches. And what's remarkable is that approximately 200 years ago, they were ruling Texas, and today it's difficult to find one person in Texas of Comanche descent.
Yeah.
You would think that some might pose the question, what happened to the Comanches? What happened to the Apaches? What happened to these Native Americans who were ruling the plains not so long ago and now cannot be found?
Would I look at this here?
What would you say to men who think therapy is a sign of weakness?
When you have a proven plan.
When I look at let me pull this up because I'm going to go questions my panel. So panel, y'all get ready. I am on imdb.com right now. And it lists the stars of the documentary. It lists all of the people involved, the writers, and I'm just sorry. I believe in naming it and claiming it. John Ehler is a director. Johnny St. Hours is a director. The writers: Brian Burstein, Zachary Herman, Jeremiah Murphy, Jordan Rosenblum, Peter Sherman, Stephen David, Tim W. Kelly, Yoshi. Let's see here. Yoshi Stone, Adam Jones Siegler for dialogue. They're listed as the writers. And you see the cast here. My wife made this observation. She says, my God, I'm watching this thing and I don't see nobody Black in this docuseries at all. Oh, that was, there's one brother who played Pompey. But this is what I think is important also, Gerald. These are the producers of this trash, of this factually incorrect and wrong stuff. Petra Hobel, Thaddeus Busca, Chelsea Coates, Mary Donahue, Sam Epstein, Carter Figueroa, Ronald Freed, Tim W. Kelly, Nick Gutler, Brian Meir, Paul Kleiman, Brian Burstein, Liz DeFore, Nikki Macron, Michael Hampton, Jonathan Soule, Yoshi Stone, Philip Watson, Christian Burns, Stephen David, Jennifer Davidson, Leonardo DiCaprio, Russell McCarroll. Those are executive producers. Now, again, some of these folks participated in some of this series from, you see, 2017, 2018. These are cinematographers. These are editors. This is casting. This is production designer, art director, costume designer, makeup, production manager, everything that goes along with it. The reason all of this is important, Gerald, is because these are the people who are responsible for producing the docuseries, and the History Channel has an obligation that before you air some crap like this, that it needs to be factually correct. And we see documentaries on PBS where they will say, oh, no, these things need to be corrected before we put this on the air. The problem that I have is when you air this kind of crap, folk run with it and go, I saw it on the History Channel. It must be true.
Huh. Well, maybe that's part of the problem, because obviously the History Channel is pumping out propaganda. And we should also ask ourselves, who are the major stockholders in the History Channel? Who are the puppeteers, for example? You cited Mr. DiCaprio, but of course, he is getting a paycheck from someone higher on the food chain. And I think that it's highly appropriate for you to call these people out, just like I think it's even more appropriate for your audience to begin to ask these searching questions as to how this sort of propaganda, which ultimately is an expression of anti-Blackness, how it manages to worm its way into our living room.
Well, the people who own it is A&E. Who owns A&E, go back to my iPad, is the Hearst Corporation. And A&E Global Media also is a joint venture of Hearst and the Walt Disney Company. So A&E falls under the A&E Global Media, falls under the ownership is Hearst and the Walt Disney Company. And so the History Channel is one of the networks that fall underneath that. So the question that we should be asking specifically, I say, definitely are to the producers and the writers and the researchers, because they're doing the docuseries. Then it is airing on the History Channel. So who are the execs in charge of that particular show? And now you go to the owners of the History Channel, which is A&E Global, and that is the Hearst Corporation and the Walt Disney Company. Questions from the panel. I'll start with Michael first.
Hey, Gerald, good to see you again.
Right on.
All right. When we deal with this history, and I teach about Texas independence also, when we talk about the Texas Rangers starting about 1835, 1836, part of their duty was also capturing runaway slaves.
There you go.
As well. Okay. Can you talk some about that history also? And we know, I'm glad you mentioned Vicente Guerrero, the second president of Mexico, who was Afro-Latino, former slave, because he abolished slavery in Mexico in 1829.
Well, it's interesting. The Texas Rangers, in many ways, were state-sponsored death squads. Not only were they capturing
domestic terrorists.
Exactly. They were hell on the indigenous population.
Yes.
And keep in mind as well that one of the reasons that the United States itself waged war against Mexico a few years later in 1846, walking away with California, which now bills itself as the fourth largest economy on planet Earth, is because Mexico refused to return runaway Africans who had crossed the border into Mexico, leading to major capital loss on the part of Texas enslavers. It's oftentimes discussed in this country about following the North Star to freedom, which is highly appropriate. That is to say, the Africans escaping north to Canada, but thousands of Africans were escaping south into Mexico.
Correct.
Leads to the war against Mexico, which leads to the denuding of a good deal of Mexican territory.
Yeah.
Let's go to Matt Manning, because he's out of Corpus Christi. Matt?
So, Dr. Horn, I'm a lifelong Texan. I took that Texas history class a lot more recently than Roland, because I'm not as long in the tooth. But
guess what? It's the same damn book. That shit ain't changed. Your ass had the same thick ass book.
I'm sure Miss Swafford got that book from you when she taught it to me much more recently than you learned it. And I was shaking my head because Michael literally stole the question I was going to ask. But to just add some contour, I was going to ask Dr. Horn if you'd shed some light on how much what you've seen in terms of, your historical review, how much of that, reticence to return the capital loss was discussed at the time, because obviously I never learned that in Texas history, but clearly that was one of the major impetus behind, their seeking to break away. So how much of that was actually being discussed in documents at the time, if you know?
Well, the newspapers were full of these sorts of stories. Keep in mind as well that these so-called Texians were not above crossing the border into Mexico and snatching dark-skinned people who they thought could pass for an enslaved African, driving them kicking and screaming across the border to work as an enslaved person. This person might not have been a runaway. It might have been an Afro-Mexican, for example. So the Texians raised hell in Mexico, which is one of the reasons, if you talk to Mexicans today, at least those that are intelligent, they have a very negative evaluation of Texas generally in the United States more broadly.
Because history is passed down through the generations orally. All right, that's where you get a lot of your, everything doesn't come from a book necessarily. All right, so people have long memories, and rightfully so. I mean, this country has done so much wickedness and dirt to a lot of people. All right, and they dread, this is the one thing that they dread, that all this is coming back up on them. All right.
Wanda.
So I just want to talk a little bit actually about the production of the docu-series. As someone who has worked in the entertainment industry for years, I think the unfortunate part about this is that when you distribute a docu-series like this and you have certain names attached, there is a level of trust when it comes to distributing it. So having the name Leonardo DiCaprio attached to something like this, people may not unfortunately watch it ahead of time to fact check it. And that's just as you said, Roland, with Black-led charter schools earlier in the program, there needs to be more of a push for Black-led produced history productions. So on that note, because we're such a media-driven society, I'm just wondering if you have any docu-series that you know of that are Black produced and researched that have been distributed that you would recommend for people to watch.
Well, it just escaped me, but there's a joint Canadian broadcasting, South African broadcasting series on slavery in the United States. If you put those terms into a search engine, will probably emerge. And it presents a view of the United States, and indeed a view of 1776, that is altogether different from the kind of poppycock and balderdash and propaganda we're being fed, and will be fed in bountiful amounts coming in the run-up to 2026, the 250th anniversary of the birthday of the United States of America. I should also mention that the Hearst Corporation, which is at the top of the food chain in terms of this docuseries, also controls the Houston Chronicle, the major daily newspaper in this sizable city.
And in fact, the Houston Chronicle is actually the largest newspaper in the Southwest United States.
Exactly. And so what that says to me is that they have less of an excuse to put out falsehoods because they're cited, or at least they have an organ, they have an arm of the corporation right there in the Lone Star State, right there in the state of Texas, in the city of Houston. I read the Houston Chronicle on a regular basis. And I know some of these people who are administering that newspaper, so they really have no excuse for making this sort of production.
Is this what you're referring to, Gerald? I'm on the CBC's Canadian broadcast. This series called Enslaved?
That's one, and there's another one too, starring the woman. If you can put this into the search,
I will.
The Williams sister's mother in that Will Smith vehicle.
Aunjanue Ellis.
Exactly. She's in this CBC South African broadcasting production. I show it to my class.
You mean you mean the Book of Negroes?
There it is.
Yeah, that actually aired on BET. BET actually aired that. It's called The Book of Negroes.
Yes. I recommend it highly. It's an eye opener, and once again, it's not financed by U.S. entities. It's financed by the Canadians and the South Africans.
Yeah, that actually, what you're talking about, aired in 2014. Pull the audio up, please. This is the trailer that Gerald is talking about.
You gotta let go of that Africa thing. This your home now. We's all you got.
Coming to CBC.
We are not in the promised land. Not yet.
I am Aminata Diallo. I seem to have trouble dying. By all accounts, I should not have lived this long.
Powerball is trying to censor this video before more people discover the loophole that has already helped my husband.
I have been across the big river, and now I am back.
The Book of Negroes begins Wednesday, January 7th on CBC.
That's what that is. And so Gerald, I was just so irked when I saw that and knowing the true history and knowing that people will watch this and they will think that these people, they would just land, and those horrible Mexicans wouldn't just leave those Western settlers alone, and Davy Crockett and Sam Houston, they all were coming there because they were looking for a better life, leaving the places. No, they were pissed off that Mexico said, we're not going to allow you to continue having slavery in the Texas territory. That's what pissed them off. And they said, nope, they about to jack up the economy. That's the only economy that we have. And we're going to fight. And that's what the Alamo was about. That's what all that crap was about.
And that's what Sandra Bland was about. Recall that a few years ago in Prairie View, Texas, this black woman wound up dead as a result of an unfortunate encounter with the authorities in that suburb, if you like, of Houston, Texas. George Floyd, not coincidentally, also has roots in the Lone Star State as well.
Yeah, with the same high school I did, Jack Yates High School.
Exactly. And so you cannot separate the kind of misinformation and disinformation that's pumped out through the airwaves that presents a profound representation of anti-Blackness for the kinds of unfortunate slayings and murders that take place all too routinely, inflicted against Black people with roots in the Lone Star State.
And this is one of the reasons why. And again, what happens when you know your history, when you know those things, and people sort of get mad at you. I did this, and a lot of people, Gerald, were not happy with me, but ain't like I gave a damn. When Rick Perry was the governor of Texas, he felt that when Texas A&M joined the Southeastern Conference, that there needed to be something, some trophy or something that was awarded to whoever won the annual game between Texas A&M and the University of South Carolina. So then they settled upon something called the Bonham Trophy. And so this says, few have ever heard of this. And so this is the trophy right here. And you see the Bonham Trophy. Well, a couple of years ago, I was watching the game, and it was on ESPN. They were talking about, hey, where's this trophy? Who had it? Who has it? Where can we find it? Didn't quite understand it. And so, again, when you don't know history, the Bonham Trophy is named and modeled after Alamo battle hero James Bonham. He was from South Carolina, traveled to Texas to fight with the Texians at the Alamo, and so they wanted to talk about it. And really, it got lost. Folks didn't know where in the hell the trophy was and all of that. And I actually did a video early on this, and I said to any Texas A&M player and South Carolina player, especially if you Black, if your ass holds this trophy up, you are holding up a Confederate monument, because anybody who was fighting at the Alamo against Santa Anna's troops, those people were fighting to continue slavery in Texas.
Well, as you know more than most, in Houston in particular, there's still a number of streets named after Confederate heroes. It was not so long ago that the street that's now called Emancipation Avenue near the University of Houston was named after a blood-stained Confederate. And of course, he has not been alone in that ill-fated regard. And so we have a lot of work to do, and I congratulate you for bringing this trashy docuseries to a wider attention of our audience.
We, of course, in a couple of weeks are going to have Juneteenth. And before I let you go, I really just want you, and I shared this with, I was talking to Governor Westmore, and we were talking about Juneteenth, the celebration there. And I said to him, Governor, please do me a favor. I need you and others to make perfectly clear that Juneteenth was not a day of picnics. It was not a day of celebration. It wasn't a day of barbecues and cookouts. That for Black people in Texas, where Juneteenth was founded, it was about freedom. It was the pursuit of economic freedom. It was pursuit of the right to vote, civil rights. I said, what we cannot do is allow that Juneteenth is a national holiday, and it is the only day that actually recognizes and tied to slavery. We cannot allow this to be bastardized and prostituted and turned into a day of partying and line dancing. There has to be a freedom component that tied with it.
Well, more than that, we also need accuracy with regard to Juneteenth. That is to say, the traditional story of the men in blue showing up in Galveston and alerting these enslaved Africans to the reality that supposedly you're free, that's a misrepresentation. First of all, the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863, issued by the Lincoln government, did not have any standing in Confederate Texas. Actually, what happens is that the men in blue of the U.S. Army are showing up in Galveston because the enslavers plan to extend slavery back into Mexico. Because recall, Cinco de Mayo, marked on May 5th every year, particularly by our Mexican-American brothers and sisters, the French had taken over Mexico and they were supporting the Confederates. And so the Confederates were going to make a jailbreak into Mexico, dragging, kicking, and screaming enslaved Africans alongside with them so that they could extend the...
Didn't learn that, did we? I wonder why. Like he said, that story that you were taught was an oversimplification, all right? We knew about the Emancipation Proclamation. Originally it was in 1863, and like I mentioned beforehand earlier in the video, the Juneteenth was the commemoration of the people down in Texas finding out almost 2 years later. All right, so then that was it. But now you're learning something more.
Life and legacy of slavery. But what happens with the men in blue showing up in Galveston, they were recruiting these Black men as the Confederacy was collapsing, and they managed to join the men in blue, and then they, along with progressive and patriotic Mexicans, helped to strangle the French-based puppet regime. And interestingly enough, the French puppet leader, Maximilian, he was assassinated, he was killed. He was subjected to the death penalty on June 19th, 1867, and that is a further reason to mark Juneteenth, because June 19th, 1867, in many ways has more resonance and more profundity than June 19th, 1865, which is part of the traditional story.
Last thing I want to do is this here, because as you were talking, you mentioned that documentary, the 6-part series out of Canada. I actually had the director of this movie. It came out during COVID, did not get much attention. It was about a group of Black soldiers in Houston, Texas during Jim Crow who was sick and tired of sick and tired. It's called The 24th.
Yeah, I saw that.
A lot of people had no idea about this. And it was, folks, if y'all pull it up on YouTube, the interview that we did with the director, it was fascinating conversation about the making of this movie. And so, folks, if you're not aware of this, we're just going to play this trailer, then we're going to close it.
The brother from, he did that slave Oh man, not the one Oprah Winfrey was trying to bring back. Damn it, what was it? Oh man, the one after that. Damn it, what was it? He's got those funny eyes. The brother from the newest thing he was in was it Rebel Ridge? Anyway, he said he's gonna do a. You'll see. Probably
close this out.
Men of the 24th Infantry. This is Texas.
The brother from.
We have a great opportunity here.
England.
Legacy.
English, there he is.
Proven worthy. Will
Right
carry
there.
us all the way to the shores of France. Things are a little different down here in the South. I will expect you men to obey the racial code.
Yes, sir. The truth is, behind closed doors, the P word became my secret sin at age 10. And for
Get back with the others.
Just go ahead, drive this machine.
Officer Cross, this is a white man's world. Every man here has got a lit fuse.
Jim Crow's the law. Respect it.
What we gonna do? The police brutalize us, sir. All we want is to be treated as soldiers.
As military police, you are to ensure order of the men of the 24th Infantry only.
Drop the knife.
Back up!
I was robbed of my honor. You get out of here before they take yours too.
General, get the 24th in the fight.
He's never going to do that.
What do we do, sir? William, I've done all I can do here.
We have a problem.
We're gonna take our country back.
The law run this town.
There's a militia on the way.
Are they?
Which way did they go?
Keep pushing people down. Sooner or later, they rise up.
Can you identify any of the leaders of the mutiny?
When I aimed the gun, I saw a man. He didn't see one back.
Could be wrong though, but
That was a black director, black writers, and again, our stories are important, folks. It's always great to have Gerald. I can say this, I ain't got a problem saying it. I know, Michael, I know you had him on the show, but I think I probably have sold more Gerald Horne books than anybody else. Every time Gerald got a book, he's on the show. He's a prolific writer, an amazing historian, and so I ain't got no problem helping to put coins in Gerald's pockets. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, get this book. Because what Gerald does in here, because it's called The Counter-Revolution.
Counter-Revolution of 1836. So, yeah, I'm gonna look into that myself. You know, damn. Out of hatred and jealousy and envy of us, people that are over us. Wow. Just wow. This is Psalms. I'll close with this because they love to make mockery of us in so many different ways. This is Psalms, excuse me. 40 and 15. It says, "Let them be desolate for a reward of their shame that say unto me, aha, aha." So like I said, there's so many scriptures in here about all that he's done. He's going to get double. Of course, that's Revelation 18, but everything's going to come back on his head. All right. And there's no getting out of it. This is what we're joyful for. All right. Because he does not get away. And the he that I'm talking about is the so-called white man. the nation of Edom, the wicked ones. So with that, I hope whoever views this is edified, of course, like always. And until the next video, hey, shalom.